Hello. Welcome to Ratio. We are here to improve our skills in the legal reasoning section of CLAT. And the method that we are going to use to do it is to look at past year questions in CLAT that are based on this pattern. Today, we are looking at one of the passages from CLAT 2020, which is based on environmental law. So let's look at it. On 7th May 2020, a major leakage of styrene gas was reported from the plastics manufacturing plant LG Polymers. The accident took place when the cooling system got clogged due to the mismanagement of factory workers, resulting in turning the city into a gas chamber. Now it says that this styrene gas is a hazardous chemical. So there are some principles that are given to us: principle of polluters pay principle, strict liability principle, and absolute liability principle. Let's look at them. The doctrine of polluters pay says that whoever has caused damage to the environment must restore it. So the principle explicitly affirms that the person who damages or destructs the environment has the absolute obligation to bear the cost of ameliorating the environment. It says the polluter is legally responsible to reimburse the individual sufferers as well as pay for the revitalization of the damaged environment. So polluter's pay says two things. First, it says compensate the sufferers. Second, it says restore the environment. So whoever is the polluter has to pay for both of these things. Then comes the principle of strict liability. This was established in this case, Ryland versus Fletcher, where they said if land is used in unnatural manner and who keeps any hazardous substance would be liable on the principle of strict liability for any damage that occurred on escape of such perilous substance. So it is talking about three things. First, land should be used in unnatural manner and should store hazardous substance. That substance should escape. As a result of the escape, there should be some damage. If these three things are met, then the doctrine of strict liability will be attracted. So these three things: hazardous substance, escape, damage. However, the person is liable only when there is a non-natural use of land. The principle also restricts liability. So it says liability will not happen. Liability will not take place when the escape is due to the act of strangers, act of God, unnatural calamity, or due to the person injured, or when it happens with the consent of the person injured or with statutory authority. So these things, the things that I am highlighting, these are exceptions to the rule of principle of strict liability. So we have to remember four things. First, for principle of strict liability to apply, three things need to be met. First, unnatural use of land or hazardous substance, escape of that substance, damage. The fourth thing that we have to learn is that there are some exceptions to it. So whenever we come across a question on strict liability, we will come back to the passage and see if some exception is attracted or not attracted. Principle 3, principle of absolute liability. Now this is a stringent form of strict liability as it is devoid of any exceptions that were mentioned under the earlier principle. This was held in MC Mehta versus Union of India. It says that whenever an enterprise is engaged in any dangerous or hazardous activity that threatens the people working in the enterprise and those nearby, it owes an absolute and non-delegable duty to the community that no harm will be caused. If harm is indeed caused, the enterprise will have to compensate for damages and can't use the exceptions provided in the case of strict liability. The enterprise can't claim that the harm has not been caused due to negligence or that it had taken all reasonable precautions. So absolute liability is a stricter version of strict liability. There are no exceptions. If you are engaged in a dangerous or hazardous activity, then you will be liable. So three principles: polluters pay, which means you will compensate the sufferers as well as bear the cost of restoring the environment. Then there is strict liability. If a hazardous substance escapes and causes damages, then you are strictly liable. But there are some exceptions to it. And absolute liability is basically strict liability without any exceptions. So if we remember these things, we will be able to answer the questions easily. Under which of the following principles will the company LG Polymers be liable? Look at LG Polymers case. There was some gas which is known as a hazardous chemical. That gas got released. What principles will apply? Polluters pay will apply because they will have to compensate the sufferers and as well as restore the environment. Strict liability will apply because a hazardous substance escaped and caused damage and absolute liability will also apply because they were dealing with a hazardous substance. So the answer will be D. As per the polluters pay principles, LG Polymers will be liable to pay amount of money for restoration of environment only? No. Amount of money for restoration of environment and compensation to individuals who suffered the loss? Yes. Polluters pay applies to the polluter, so that they have to compensate the people who suffered, as well as they have to spend money to restore the environment. A company ABC Limited operates an industrial chemical plant in the city of Azadnagar. Due to an earthquake on July 22, 2020, the valves of the reactors in the plant get damaged, due to which the operators could not properly transport the hazardous gas for chemical vaporization, resulting in gas leakage. The gas leakage resulted in the death of 12 workers of the plant and also some people living nearby the plant. In this situation, in order to decipher the ability of ABC Limited, choose the best option. So think about it. What principles will apply? Polluters pay will apply because some people suffered loss. Strict liability will apply because there was a hazardous gas and the gas escaped. And absolute liability will apply because they were dealing with hazardous chemicals. So strict liability will apply. Will strict liability apply? No. Strict liability will not apply because the escape happened due to an earthquake. Polluters pay will apply. Absolute liability will apply. But strict liability will not apply because the escape happened due to act of God. Look here. The principle also restricts liability when the escape is due to an act of strangers, act of God. So here, what is an act of God? Act of God, for example, a natural calamity. So here, how did the escape take place? The escape took place because of earthquake. That is an act of God, a natural calamity. So option B is correct. Polluters pay and principle of absolute liability will apply, but strict liability will not apply. The argument of LG Polymers that they did not know the styrene gas could leak is a now strict liability means you will be liable irrespective of whether it was your fault or not. So if LG Polymers is saying that look, this was not our fault, we did the best we could, that argument will be a bad argument. It would be a weak argument. It would not help them in any case. It would not help them in polluters pay. It will not help them in strict liability. It will not help them in absolute liability. So option C is correct. XYZ is a company operating in a pesticide factory in the city of Rampur. On one day, due to the negligence of factory staff, there is a leakage on the pesticide gas, as a result of which many pests and insects which feed on plantation crops in the nearby farm are killed. There is no harm caused to the people living nearby or the workers of the pesticide factory. However, the leakage was so humongous that it reduced the quality of air in the city, causing breathing problems for the people living around in the area. In this case, will XYZ be absolutely liable? We can't say because we don't know if this pesticide gas is a hazardous chemical. Will they be liable under strict liability? We don't know because we don't know that whether this pesticide gas is a hazardous chemical. Let's look at C. XYZ's liability under the strict and absolute liability principle will depend upon the inquiry as to whether the leaked pesticide gas was a hazardous substance. Yes, that seems to be correct. Or not. And XYZ will be liable under the polluter's pay principle. So XYZ will be liable under polluter's pay because it will have to restore the environment. But whether it will be liable under strict liability or absolute liability, we cannot say. And it will depend on whether that gas was a hazardous gas or not. So that was this passage on environmental law from CLAT 2020. Thank you.